Right. So with the landfill space in Johannesburg becoming a major issue, and with us being on Environmental Day, we are looking into exactly what that means for the city of Johannesburg and how can it be combated by the Metropolitan. Now we'll be speaking to Raymond Dube, who is currently the NAMPAK Liquid Cartons Managing Director. He joins us via telephone line. Raymond, it's such a pleasure to be talking to you this morning. A very good morning to you. Now, to get straight into it, about 3 years ago, we were told that we had about 3 years left of landfill sites in Johannesburg. We are very closely reaching the time where we'll have to make alternative arrangements.
Yeah, that is true. We're being told now that we have at least the space that is left is an average of about 4.5 years of landfill space in the city to help manage the country's waste problem, and with guidance from the end producer responsibility regulations. Producers, including brand owners of plastic and all other packaging, electronic, glass bottles, paper, technology, and other goods will now be held responsible for making sure that their products are either collected and recycled after the consumer use. And this is the new legislation which it's called EPR, and producer responsibility regulation.
I mean, this is a very important a very important development, but now how do you enforce that? How do you ensure that if you are the producer of, say, glass bottles, that you are responsible and we ensure that you do collect those glass bottles and recycle them?
It is actually, I would say for many products, and producers must make sure that after consumers have used their goods, the items that are collected, which is actually the packaging material, are returned and then reused or recycled. Producers must work with municipalities, they must work with waste management companies as well as informal waste collectors to establish a collection and recycling schemes within the next 6 months. For example, is producers of light bulbs, your fluorescent lights, must introduce a scheme that after a year it took effect, they have to collect at least 50% of all the bulbs from the consumers, and after 5 years, that target moves to 70%. So the government is serious about this, and if people are not doing it, they're going to be having to be fined, and license for producing can actually be removed.
Now, how do we get the community involved in this? We know that there was an ARO project that was rolled out, but that seemed to sideline the, as you call them, the informal recyclers or reclaimers or waste pickers, whichever one you prefer. How do we ensure that they, in particular, and we know that they make a living off of this, on sideline, and how do the rest of the communities get involved without having to necessarily wait for the producers of these recyclable materials?
I think it's a very good question. First of all, the informal waste cyclers cannot be sidelined in this process. I think it will be unfair, and that process won't work. When one looks at models where this waste collection happens, it starts with each and every household. So in our household, we need to make sure that we have segregation of waste happening, separate food waste, separate paper, separate plastics, and then separate glass and cans, and make sure all of that is collected by the municipality. In most cases, one will actually include the informal settlers, and then they will sell this waste back to the waste recycling companies, and then in that way they get a living. And the point I'm trying to make here is that process in countries like Colombia, India, Brazil is done by informal waste pickers. And these people are actually making a living out of collecting and reselling waste to be recycled.
How did you get here? It's over 90 years of waste, of course. It's not going to be an easy thing to dispose of, but we've had the warning signs. We've seen them from years ago. We're now in a position where we not only need the recyclable materials to be ramped up in this country, or recycling to be ramped up in Johannesburg in particular, but now we're in a position where we might have to open up new landfill sites, which will cost the taxpayers more money. How did we get here, Raymond?
The problem is that, we, like the rest of the world, we are called third world country, and when one looks at the initial start in households, which is the segregation of waste, like as I mentioned, after using the products, one has to make sure that the whole community, awareness about the segregation of waste is driven seriously by the government, as well as companies like Fiber Cycle, who is a producer, responsible organization, educating communities and consumers at large in terms of the process, starting with each and every one of us, making wise choices when we buy products as well, in terms of what is recyclable, what is not recyclable. In that way is the only way that this process can be driven going forward. It has to start with us educating the consumers, educating each and every one of us. In that way also, the consumers must take responsibility of buying what you call greener packaging, when they go and buy shops for products that they use.
In 2018, the only 10% of waste was being recycled in the city of Johannesburg. The target set was 30%. How are we faring in meeting that target?
Oh, we are far back, as I said. This is a process. Things will improve, and what is nicer is that people don't know this. We have done a research in South Africa in terms of the informal waste pickers. And the statistics is telling us that there's almost like 90,000 South Africans who are informal waste pickers, supplying at least 80 to 90% of paper and packaging waste to recyclers. So that's huge. When one looks at it, the waste economy providing over, say, close to 100 million jobs, and both informal and informal contribute 24.3 billion to the South African GDP. So what I'm trying to say, despite the benefits of only 10% of recycled happening, the money involved, in all of this, at the end of the day, it's good for both informal and informal, waste recyclers.
Now, of course, we would have seen the informal waste recyclers, they pull their trolleys around when it's dustbin day, and they go through the waste before the rubbish bin collectors come around to collect that. How do we, make... we look at that and we think to ourselves, oh, that is so disgusting. But how do you, as the city of Johannesburg, make recycling more appealing to just ordinary residents? You've spoken about ensuring that residents do buy recyclable materials, but, besides us talking about it now, there's not much out there that implores people to do so.
I kind of like your question because, one needs to understand that, at the end of the day, what's more important here is separation at source. So the waste pickers make, resources available by doing exactly exactly that. You know, it is also very important for municipalities, you know, not only Johannesburg, you know, to make the infrastructure available, and, you know, to also, you know, educate the consumers in terms of, you know, what the recycling streams that are available, you know, and making the infrastructure as well, making sure that the waste pickers are in a way giving jobs to do this and are given the infrastructure. I mean, you spoke about the trolley that the guys are pushing. One needs to understand this is a very, a job which lacks prestige. When one is doing this job, you mentioned that we basically as humans look at these people because they're doing a job that lacks prestige. You know, in a way, we need to support them, make sure that they are better paid, make sure that they have the correct PPE, make sure that they have the correct infrastructure, trolleys, the waste bins, make sure that everything is there for them to do this job. Remember, you know, they're doing it at a very low rate in terms of how much they get per kilo of what they're selling. So we need to, as a government, as municipality, to make it attractive in terms of making sure that and every one of us contributes to this. You know, for us, you know, we pay money every month for waste to be collected. You know, that money should be going to pay, you know, these people. They are helping us to clean our environment, and we don't see it that way. And the only thing we do is, you know, we look down upon them, and we don't understand that, you know, they're playing a huge role in making sure that, you know, we have a better environment that we will leave for our future generations to come.
Raymond Dube, thank you so much for your time this morning. He's the Managing Director of NAMPAK Liquid Cartons, and of course the City of Johannesburg. About 4.5 years left of landfill space, according to Pick It Up, until we run out of it. An important conversation that needs to continue to be had. Right.